Social movements are class struggle. Class struggle is a constant process that underlies and shapes all life under capitalism, whether or not it is consciously embraced. Capitalism compels workers to struggle, whether it's against their bosses, the police, or some state policy. Marxists must embrace the full range of struggle and view it as an opportunity. As Lenin wrote in What Is to Be Done, the Social Democrats' ideal should not be the trade union secretary, but the tribune of the people, who is able to react to every manifestation of tyranny and oppression, no matter where it appears, no matter what stratum or class of people it affects, who is able to generalize all these manifestations and produce a single picture of police violence and capitalist exploitation, who is able to take advantage of every event, however small, in order to set forth before all his socialist convictions and her democratic demands in order to clarify for all and everyone the world historic significance of the struggle for the emancipation of the proletariat. All right. Classes do not appear as homogeneous social and political entities with fully formed common goals. Working class consciousness is mixed. The dominant ideas of any age are the ideas of the ruling class. Resistance to oppression and exploitation develops oppositional consciousness. Marxists seek to develop oppositional consciousness into class consciousness as opposed to sectional and individual consciousness. This means, among other things, opposing racism, sexism, and other divisive ideologies. Classes are not the direct collective actors that struggle to change the world. That historic privilege belongs to social movements. Social movements involve the self-selected opponents of some aspect of life under the domination of capital, whether that's racism, sexism, war, austerity, ecocide, or another issue. As the working class and oppressed imagine and work toward alternatives to the existing order, the ruling class intervenes from above to limit our imaginations and undermine our progress. To neutralize the threat posed by movements, the ruling class employs a mix of repression and persuasion to shape the organization, goals, and methods of social movements. As a result of the ruling class domination of available ideas, class struggle combines a clashing mixture of resistance and accommodation. Liberal, conservative, and radical ideas exist in a confused and uneasy collision within the same groups or even same minds. Various politics contend for influence. This makes social movements themselves important sites of struggle over the best way forward. Every facet of movement activity, organization, strategy, and tactics is potentially debatable. These arguments are a living aspect of the class struggle. This presents a challenge to revolutionary socialists. We must ask ourselves, where is struggle actually occurring against this or that manifestation of capitalism? And what part can we play in that struggle to advance it, to identify and lend support to the most advanced sections? How best can we bring to bear the ideas of revolutionary socialism in practical ways that will strengthen this or that actual movement? The conception is activist in its core. Consciousness changes in struggle. Dominant paradigms melt into air. New horizons open up. Individuals and groups learn, share, test, enlarge, or diminish various skills or capacities, along with the confidence and will to use them. Implicit here is a measure of movement success. To what degree do movements succeed in promoting self-empowerment, self-organization, and escape from ruling class influence? All movements of the oppressed and exploited demand the support of socialists. Socialist consciousness emerges as movements mature. To contend for influence, we need to master the art and science of how revolutionaries function within social movements. The active intervention of Marxists should generalize from struggle, clarify its political lessons, formulate strategies to win, prove our ideas in practice, and pose initiatives for the movement that move it toward socialist consciousness. We want to connect isolated struggles to each other and to the larger struggle to transform society. The radicalization of mass consciousness is a necessary precondition for creating a revolutionary socialist party. In reactionary periods, the unfavorable balance of class forces and the strength of capitalist ideology, as well as the low level of consciousness and struggle, can preclude building revolutionary organization. But in radical periods, when the movement from below explodes, like in the late 60s, revolutionary organizations can grow enormously. But without laying the foundation, particularly by developing cadres with the experience to provide socialist leadership, the chance to advance will be lost. Some socialists do good activist work, but don't raise politically controversial issues so as to not antagonize liberals. It's usually liberals. They are the movement good guys, unwilling to challenge existing consciousness. The worst error socialists can make inside a mass movement is to adapt to its political level. A movement's right wing may red bait those to their left, claiming that socialists have an outside agenda or hurt the unity and growth of the movement. That can be intimidating to activists who have not fully broken with liberal consciousness or are insecure about their ability to win people to radical ideas. We don't do the movement or ourselves any favor by capitulating to movement police. The most important lesson that a social movement has to learn is to rely upon itself, not to subjugate its struggle to politicians, NGOs, the courts, or the labor bureaucracy. This is key to whether it will develop as a movement from below for social change or whether it will be trapped in the politics of reform from above. As Alain Badiou said, if the people do not have their own politics, they will enact the politics of their enemies. The political abhors a void. If socialists don't struggle to advance a movement, it will inevitably take a more conservative direction. Socialists must attempt to expand movements to involve more people in the process of their own self-emancipation. We have to listen to those we are in struggle with, learn from them, and teach them what we have learned. Our job is to try to raise consciousness, awareness, and the level of struggle wherever possible. We should always look for ways to strengthen movements by enriching their understanding, politics, combativeness, and confidence, and to strengthen ourselves as revolutionaries in the process. Revolutionary socialists are not only the subjects, but the objects of transformation through class struggle. We are the subjects, we're doing something, we're consciously engaging in struggle, but we're also the objects, we're having something done to us in the process. We're liberating ourselves from bourgeois ideology, ridding ourselves of the muck of ages, and attempting to become fit to found society anew. Best case scenario, at least. We have to create a conduit between ourselves and movement activists to move them closer to socialist politics. We should seek influence, not only membership. That can take many forms, influencing individual activists and organizations, influencing specific decisions within a coalition, leading an action that emboldens others to fight on, making an impactful speech, or spreading a political analysis that gets widely adopted. We have to reject elitism and the sectarian tendency to separate ourselves from the less woke. Socialists are just among the first to begin the process of radicalization. We don't moralistically blame anyone for their place in that process or their hesitancy to proceed in it. It's the job of the advanced to always try to convince our fellow fighters to go further. Trotsky put it very simply, we'll work with anyone, but we're going all the way. The Marxist method for revolutionaries in movement struggles goes back 175 years to the Communist Manifesto, which said, "The communists fight for the attainment of the immediate aims, for the enforcement of the momentary interests of the working class, but in the movement of the present, they also represent and take care of the future of that movement." Our work in social movements and labor struggles must be integrated with the task of winning people to revolutionary politics and its organizational expression. To approach activism as a revolutionary socialism is to take the fight for immediate gains seriously and to see it as part of the larger struggle for socialism. This leads us to prefer approaches that build class independence, organization, and combativity. While fighting for politics inside a movement, we need to create a political bridge between the movement and socialist organization. When the level of struggle increases, we have the chance to grow. Participating in or even witnessing mass struggle makes another world seem possible. People will still primarily be drawn to reformism, though, looking to solve the problem within the existing system, but they are more willing to consider socialist ideas and organization. Many militant activists who don't join durable socialist organizations will sink back into the liberal swamp when the level of struggle declines. The right wing of a movement often accuses socialists of poaching from the movement. But when we recruit, we are building the movement because strong socialist organization serves as a continuity between struggles. Revolutionaries use declines in one movement to shift resources into building another. We continue to organize, engage in political education, produce propaganda, and train cadre to be stronger for the next upturn in struggle. This builds a basis not only for socialist organization, but for class struggle more broadly. The two must be intertwined. Socialists have no interests separate and apart from those of the movement to liberate the exploited and oppressed. The party must undertake a continuous and complex work of education. It must train revolutionary leaders steeped in the Marxist tradition, but capable of making concrete analyses and of independent judgment. It must produce a broad layer of, to use Gramsci's term, organic intellectuals, workers with a clear conception of the overall nature of the struggle and the methods of waging it. It must work for the widest possible dissemination of basic Marxist and socialist principles among the working class by ceaselessly translating its theory into topical and easily understood examples and exposures in its press and all its propaganda. A revolutionary organization must have people developed enough politically to carry Marxist methods and arguments into every struggle. It needs militants trained in action and theory, and lots of them. So we must pursue the growth of our organizations and the embrace of this project by our memberships. Eventually, we need a revolutionary socialist party with organized workers in key sectors of the economy. It needs to reflect the demographics of the class, and it needs to be able to lead struggle during a revolutionary crisis eventually. But it will not be a straight line from here to there. The forefront of class struggle today is in social movements. The most political people, the people most open to Marxism, will be found in these movements. The most important road to building revolutionary organization will be through building and intervening in them. So this is not just a presentation, but a plea to take up this strategy. The plea goes out to people here for the first time and to our members and to anyone interested in transforming the world, really. And it's also a note to self. Oops. Preparing for tonight has been helpful for me to reinvestigate what I was taught and recommit to the best of it. This approach underlies our dedication to the study this approach underlies our dedication to the study of the history of class struggle, as well as to Marxist theory, strategy, and tactics, which are no more than the synthesized lessons of that history. This approach is the motivation for learning to think, argue, and fight together as Marxists, for standing with the rebels on picket lines, against riot lines, come what may. For all the meetings, readings, writings, kickoffs, report backs, and discussions. For making hard arguments about what should be done next at crucial turns in a movement. For building locally while reaching for higher levels of national organization and international connection. For flying our red flag high as a signal to all who might take at least a few steps forward with us. We may be few, inexperienced, bewildered by our predicament, and unable to flex as fully as we'd like at this point, but there's a method to our madness. And that's what Marxism is really, a method, a way of doing something, a way of making international proletarian revolution. And I'm glad to be doing that with you, comrades.